Okay, hello Minecrafters and Infitechers again. Today I'm going to cover not so much a machine directly, but a process, and that's going to be polyethylene. So, polyethylene plastic is part of the uh, part of the silicon age, and it's one of these things that's a pain in the butt to make, but it is very much worth having once you do. It does seem like you go through it very quickly. I actually consider it akin to rubber. When you first start the game, rubber is such a pain. Sulfur, you have to go find sulfur. You don't have any chemical reactors or any kind of electrolysis machines when you first get into electrical machines, but you do need rubber, and so you're having to cook it up in the alloy furnace, and it's just so hard because you got to go dig up sulfur down underground. You can only scrape up little bits. The nether is actually a better place to get your initial sulfur, and then and then it seems like once you have the rubber, it takes tons of it to make even a simple copper cable or other things. Then later on, as you get better materials and better machinery, you can take sulfur and raw rubber dust and just crank out, gargantuan amounts of this stuff without even breaking a sweat. And so polyethylene follows a bit of this pattern. When you first start making it, it is a real drag. What you're going to have to do here is you're going to have to do several steps here. You're going to need an advanced distillery. And again, let's go over the types of oil that you have available to make this stuff out of. You do need oil for this. And so, let's start with the light oil. So you're going to put that in the distillery. Circuit is going to be... Oops, that's not the right stuff. You need to make the naphtha, and I probably completely butchered that pronunciation, so if you guys want to beat me up in the comments on that, sure, go ahead. But anyway, you'll need an integrated circuit of one. To make these integrated circuits, pretty simple. You take a regular circuit and you put it in your oops. You take a regular circuit and you put it in your thing here, and you can turn it into one of these guys. There we go. So we have an electronic circuit becomes this, and then using the screwdriver, depending on what position it's in, you can just follow this chart. I don't want to go too deep into that. That's pretty simple stuff. But you will need a circuit set to 1, and you'll need to pump your oil into this thing, and you'll need to get your product out. So back to the light oil. Light oil will produce for us to make the sulfuric stuff. Let's see, distillery. There's oil GC. Not sure exactly what that is. I've never actually seen this stuff before, so I'm going to skip that. There's regular oil. 25 will get you 10. That's pretty good. I think it's actually the best you can do. Light oil, 50 will get you 10. Obviously, you're better off with regular oil. Raw oil, 25 will get you 5, so raw oil is not quite as good. I've never actually found raw oil before, either. I've only found heavy and light so far. And so heavy oil, you will get 15, and heavy oil seems to be the worst deal. But you can take heavy oil, and you'll notice it's expensive to take the heavy oil to this, but you can do the same trick I did with the nitro diesel when I'm making light fuel. You can take the heavy oil, turn it into regular oil decently cheaply, and then use the regular oil and get a really good bargain for it. So heavy oil and regular oil are pretty good. I'm not including the oil cracking machine into this. When you get the oil cracking machine, or when you get the big advanced giant distillery machine, not these little ones, but the big one, the game will change. You will then have enough that naphtha stuff to fill a swimming pool. I remember my last game, I actually had more of that stuff than I knew what to do with. I had a whole room just full of barrels of that crap, and I never really needed to use it to make that much plastic. But anyway, when you're earlier in the game and you're stuck with these little distilleries, here's what we're going to do. No oil cracking unit yet. Again, that changes the game quite a bit. You can actually get much better yield with that, but we'll get into that later. When I do a video on that, I'll probably come back and cover this in nitro diesel a little bit, just so I can say, hey, you can use the products here to make some better stuff, or make this stuff in a better rate than you're doing with just straight up oil. But anyway, so you might have to transfer your oil over. You need a circuit of 4 to do that. Once it's done, make sure you clear out any heavy oil left in the distillery, and then add your circuit 1 and pump that stuff out. Once you have this thing, it is sulfuric naphtha, and you will have to get the sulfur out of it. You'll need to put 7. You have to take the sulfur out of 7 at a time. So you're always going to end up with a little bit left. Just keep whatever's left in your drum and, add it to your next run. Eventually it'll become useful to you. But once you've pumped all that out, you'll have to run that through the advanced chemical reactor. It takes 1 hydrogen and 1 empty cell, and you'll get hydrogen sulfide back. You will gain a lot of that stuff, but there is a use for that. You can turn it into sulfuric acid to make explosives, or the sulfuric acid can be used in batteries, which you could single-use batteries, which if you just want to use it up, you can take it down, you can take it down to your oil rig and use it to pump oil if you want and get some more oil. Or you can use them to power other things, like maybe you have a machine sitting off by itself looking lonely, like the basic polarizer. I want to use up my extra sulfuric acid. You will build up a ton of this stuff over time. What better way than to just turn it into batteries and, to use on your little one-off machines. I set the polarizer over here for now because I just didn't, it doesn't take a lot of that power to run it, and I didn't really need to deal with that. I don't want to get, that's a sidebar. I don't want to get into that. I did promise I would try not to get into extra stuff like that. Let me stick to the topic here, and let's get into the naphtha here. So I've taken the sulfur out of it already, and I put it in here. Now, when you first start out, you're going to need your compressor. The advanced compressor is great because it's simply because it is so much faster. I don't know if it's as energy efficient, but it is faster, and so it will help get the job done. You will want your chemical reactor. You do want to hook that up, hook your output up, so that it pipes down into some kind of fluid solidifier. And again, doesn't matter which one you used. You can get away with using the low voltage stuff on this, but it is much slower. It may be more energy efficient though. The lower voltage stuff often is, but what you're paying in that case is time versus extra electricity. So when you get to the advanced age and you're making decent amounts of whatever fuel that you've decided to use, definitely move to the advanced. And then when you get to high voltage, again, go to that stuff. It's just going to happen much quicker, and it'll save you a lot of time. So anyway, here, compressed air goes in, out it goes. And when it dumps, it's going to dump into here. Just have a mold plate ready. You can use an ingot plate if you want. Most of the stuff that I use seems to want this stuff in sheets. And so, honestly, I find it more convenient just to make the sheets. So for each time, each of these compressed guys is going to give you 72 right now. It's not a great yield. It's kind of like what I mentioned with rubber at the beginning. You're making it, but your yields aren't great. You're having to use a lot of electricity and a lot of time to make it, and it seems like it takes forever to make it. So there's a lot of waiting around for things to get done. Let me check my fuel situation here. I think I was in pretty good shape. Oh, I'm in fantastic shape. Okay. So that's pretty simple. This stuff will make sheets of it. You do need to clear them out of once in a while. Like I said, how you pump them in here. You could build a dedicated factory for this stuff if you want. I don't make it often enough. I just tend to make it in runs, so I set my machinery up so that I can, I can use the same machine that makes rubber to make the plastic. It's not a real big deal. Eventually I'm going to get to the other type of plastic as well. I'm only doing the polyethylene right now. There's a couple other types of plastic, but I will get to those later on. I don't need them yet. I will soon enough for one of them. So to try to make some of the high voltage stuff, so I will go into high voltage and extreme voltage stuff. So I will definitely cover those. I'll cover that one, probably maybe in a few days or a week or so. I'll probably get into that one as well. But anyway, pretty simple stuff. You just take it in sheets. If for some reason you need to, say, make some plastic pipe, you can take these sheets, stuff them in your macerator, and then run the dust through the extruder. Bam! There you go. You didn't have to mess with ingots. If you really need an ingot for some reason, just throw it in your electric furnace and melt the sheets down into an ingot. You might need to use the alloy smelter with the ingot tray, but I think you can actually just get away with putting it in here. You know what? Let's find out. Let's see if I made a fool of myself or not here. extra plastic over here. So, electric furnace. Oh yeah, there we go. And then it'll just melt you straight up into an ingot. 1 polyethylene bar. So, for some reason you want to borrow polyethylene, you know, all you gotta do is throw the sheets in there. Most of the time, the sheets are just getting tossed in here and melted down. Occasionally, sheets will come over here to be used to make the NAND chips. When you're getting into the medium voltage age, these things are the bane of your life because it takes so much of that redstone, it takes so much of that red alloy to make these things. When you first get started, obviously it's just terrible. You got to waste tin, you got to waste steel, and you got to waste red alloy. Later, you come up with a way to use to eliminate the tin usage, other than what's in your soldering alloy. But you're doing a little bit better here. But with plastic, oh crap, wrong way. With plastic, it's as good. This is as good as it gets, guys. One of these, you have doubled. You have cut in half the amount of red alloy wire you have to make, and that'll save you a lot of time of having to go down and chop up redstone. If you find a good redstone vein, which I did near my base, I actually know of a few, then you're not in bad shape for redstone. But sometimes you'll just get a game where you just have to travel pretty far to find this stuff. You'll really be glad for plastic then. There's a million and one other uses for this. Let me go for one of the other big uses for this is in the assembling machine, making those machine cases. You know the ones I'm talking about. Oops. The machine halls, I'm sorry. The machine halls, not the cases. So, you know what I mean. The ones that took, like this one here, you had to use extra aluminum, and you had to waste wrought iron. Now you get the assembly machine, you melt 2 sheets of plastic in, and it could be sheets, bars, dust, however you want to make the plastic. Like I said, sheets is just most convenient because it seems to have the most recipes call for it in sheets. So rather than having to run it through the roller from ingots, I just craft it directly into sheets. And then if I have the odd need for dust or for some other type of thing, I will go ahead and use. I will go ahead and just use one of my other machines to make dust or an ingot out of it. But anyway, this guy here, as you notice, it saves you an enormous amount of material. You do have to sacrifice some of your plastic, but you get these machine holes. They're made very quickly, very easily, and it's very nice to have. A more advanced way to make this stuff. I'm not there yet. Once you get to making titanium, the game changes. So let's go to the polyethylene, not polysilicon, polyethylene. Let's see, get to the liquid. There we go. So the liquid, to make the liquid, here's the recipe I'm using right now, 9600 EU. It does take these compressed air, which means you got to kick that stuff into your compressor. These cells, you do get the cells back. They aren't destroyed, thankfully. You get a small amount out of here, but the much better way is if eventually you're going to be swimming in oxygen. Oxygen, at first it seems like you don't have enough, and I'm starting to reach the point now where I've got more oxygen than I know what to do with, and so soon I'll have a good use for that. You will have to sacrifice a tiny pile of titanium dust. Titanium is very expensive to make, at least when you first get into it. It gets cheaper later on, just as you get simply, better capabilities. But the amount of plastic you get for the amount of naphtha you use is amazing. It does use more electricity, but compared to the amount it would take to make this much, it's nothing. So it takes more electricity to do the single run, but it produces far more than it would take to producing 72 at a time. Let me do the math on that real quick. So 1296 divided by 72, it's 18. Yes, it's 18. So you would need 18 times whatever that original cost was, and it was not pretty. And I think you now see it actually does save you a lot of electricity when you do it that way. Lost my place here. Here we go. So 9600 times 18 is what you would take to get the that amount, and as you can see, that's a lot. This is much more efficient, but it does involve the cost of making the titanium, and the titanium is a headache to make. But if you're willing to sacrifice, 1 ingot, grind it up, make 9 tiny dusts, set them off to the side, you can then make so much plastic. you know, you could smother the whole world in plastic then if you feel like it. So it is definitely worth doing. I'm not quite at the point of being able to make that stuff yet. So right now I still have to make it the slow and painful way of using compressed air. I'm going to get these guys... Whoa, don't want to macerate these. So I'm going to get these guys back in the compressor, and I'm not going to bore you by making you watch this whole barrel get drained. I think you've seen enough here. But the uses for this stuff, well, again, use NEI. It will tell you what you can do with it. But this is how you make it. Again, you can put together a couple machines and make a dedicated factory for this. The same machine, the same thing. It would simply involve, you know, a distillery, a chemical reactor to remove the sulfur, and then you would need another chemical reactor to actually make the thing. You'll need to compress this guy, or you'll need to load it up ahead of time with a little bit of titanium and oxygen. And so there's, you know, those are the two options there. And then you need an advanced solidifier. You could use the same machine setup to make rubber by simply making the rubber in here and dumping that out here too. So I'm kind of covered rubber a little bit as well, but I might do an actual full accounting of rubber in the future. I mentioned it here mainly though because I wanted to kind of compare it to this stuff. Like rubber, this stuff is a real drag to make it first. Later on, as you get better materials like titanium, it becomes very simple, and you know, then you'll have lots of it, but it's so useful. Useful for making circuits more cheaply. It's useful for making the NAND chips more cheaply. Yeah, I just forget, when you mix it with silicon here, you take the silicon plates and the sheets here, and you put them together, you're going to get, you know, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. You're going to get something that's going to let you make chips a lot more cheaply. So anyway, that's plastic. So hopefully this was instructive, and you know, like I said, take a look at what you can make with this stuff and have fun. And thank you for watching.